what their functions are. But the U.S. Department of Transportation has got the main responsibility, but they delegate it to the different agencies that cover the different types of transportation. It lists the Coast Guard, freight motor carrier, railway, and FDA or the FFA on here. When it talks about HAZCOM, it's hazardous communication. And that's basically the idea that you have the right to know what kind of chemicals and what kind of hazards are in your workplace. And so it's part of your orientation in starting at a new location. They actually show you the different type of chemicals and what their hazards are in first aid and how to contain them and other significant information. I'm taking a lot of our information from the textbook. Hopefully you guys can see it. But the different types of training that they have, if you're designated as a hazmat employee, someone who actually deals with hazardous materials, there's more intensified training that's required. But there's a general awareness, like how to read the placards and distinguish the different markings for hazardous material. Then there's functional specific. So if you work in an area where you're performing storage of chemicals or explosives or any other of the list of hazardous materials, then you would have specific training on how to deal with that particular chemical. And then we have safety training, like what do you do if there's a spill or there's a container that's ruptured? What kind of personal protective equipment do you have to operate in that environment, and who do you notify, and all that kind of stuff comes with the safety training. And then the driver's training is, of course, part of your CDL. Those drivers make a higher premium per mile because of the type of freight that they are actually, I'm trying to let somebody in the room here and I'm messing up here. But it helps identify the proper driving techniques. Only the top drivers can get into it. If you're not in like the top 30% of the drivers, then you can't get licensed in it in your company. If it's involved in accidents that drop them down to the lower third of the safety records, then your company even loses its certification to transport hazardous materials. This is kind of a placard is how this is described, and it shows the different areas and what information is located on the placard. It tells what the health hazard is, that's in the blue block. It tells what the fire hazard is in the red block. Yellow block has got instability hazards. And then the black and white one has specific things that go with that particular hazardous material. There's 9 classifications, and we'll go through those briefly, and we'll do a quick exercise with them at the end of the chapter. So labeling, there's a classification number that's supposed to be on each one of these placards, that 1 through 9, whatever the material is classified. A symbol that tells what its main hazard is, if it's flammable, if it's poisonous, if it's explosive, or what have you. And then it's saying that the label has to be clearly visible and weather resistant, and there can't be any other markings or labels that overlap it. And anything that you deal with under hazardous material that's coming into our country, if it's an import or if you're getting any type of shipments from other places, it has to be in English, and it has to be legible, whatever information is about the material itself. And you have to, it talks about using particular hazmat suits and boots. These can be plastic, they can have a charcoal lining in them, but it's supposed to help protect you from exposure if you're constantly in contact with these type of hazardous materials. So the general rules about loading and unloading hazardous materials, make sure the packages are secure when it's in movement. No smoking, that's pretty much everywhere now, but you can't have it anywhere near a flammable substance. No open flames near the loading zone. Truck trailer must be secured. They have to physically have chocks in front and behind the wheels whenever they're parked, plus the handbrake has to be set. And then you have to be cautious about what kind of material handling equipment you use. If you've got a forklift and you're picking up barrels, there should be a special attachment to that forklift that actually attaches to the barrels, not pick it up on a pallet. They could fall off. You could stab the barrels. I mean, there's specific training for the way that you use the different types of material handling equipment when moving hazardous material. And then you need to have at least one qualified employee present during any time that you're loading or unloading. There has to be a hazardous material certified employee there. And then it's talking about making sure that if you're handling flammable explosives, that you have grounding, which is like a wire that attaches to the floor or the vehicle, and it prevents against static shock or any kind of sparks. One of my exercises early in the military, we were doing this refueling exercise at like 3 a.m. and we had all of our vehicles lined up, waiting our turn to come up to the fuel point. And they had a fairly new operator. It was cold and rainy and it was nasty weather. And the person was jumping off of this is like a semi truck that had a tank on it, from that tank over to the vehicles. And then he was putting this huge clamp on there for a grounding strap. And before he even took the fuel out to put it into your vehicle. And all of these vehicles, there's tanks out there, there's trucks, there's other semis. They're all running because we're doing like a combat refuel. You pull in, get your fuel, and you take off. And I was like 3 vehicles back when I saw this guy jump over with the fuel nozzle, and he's spilling fuel. It was diesel, and this vehicle was running, of course, and it had ammunition in it. And he didn't hook up the static line. So as soon as he touched the fuel nozzle to the tank to put it in, a huge
boom.
spark, yes,
Boom.
a huge spark, static spark, knocked him off of and these vehicles were, this tank that was refueling was about 7 foot high. It was that high off the ground, knocked him off of that tank. And there was fuel flying everywhere because he still had the fuel handle in his hand. And so our exercise went into a stop mode, a safety pause, so we could make sure the guy was okay, clean up the fuel, have another safety briefing about the proper way to fuel up vehicles, no matter if it's a combat fueling, if it's 3 a.m. or whatever. There's certain procedures when you're handling a flammable product. So that happened when I was about 17, and it stuck in my mind through my whole career about being aware of hazards. I mean, everything that in a military environment is designed to inflict casualties. We just don't want it to be on our friendlies. So,
Mr. Yancey,
yeah.
I always thought it was gasoline that was explosive and not diesel, because I've heard that diesel engines have a glow spark. So I just thought that meant diesel wasn't as explosive.
I think he thought the same thing when he was doing that.
It's an engine.
It's the static. Both of those vehicles, the fueling vehicle just got there, and so it had, from just driving and the engines and everything, it had static, and then the vehicle that they were fueling had static, and then when you didn't ground it, that you had that repulsion, that shock, static shock. It wasn't so much of a fire that we were worried about. It was this guy getting injured from the jolt of static electricity. I mean, it can get into the thousands of volts, depending on, you know, how much static has been gathered on that vehicle. But we talk about our first one, which was explosives. And they classify explosives as anything above like 40 pounds of fireworks, but you can have, you know, gunpowder, construction. They use C4. It's a chemical explosive, dynamite, and there's certain other types of explosives that they put together. But it says that you avoid hooks and sharp throwing, dropping, and you keep it away from exhausts. So these are recommendations for safety by class. Class 2, which is gases, they must be flat and loaded on suitable racks. So if you're going to put them in barrels or whatever, or containers, the tubes that they go in, they want you to stop the engine unless it's pump powered by the vehicle, and normally that doesn't happen. The pump is normally independent so that the vehicle can be shut off. It says cargo truck liquid discharge valves must be closed and free of leaks. And discharge control procedures must be written and carried in the vehicle. They usually have that on like a clipboard. Even if you go to a gas station, you see a fuel truck there refilling the tanks. There's a checklist usually that the person has on them when they get out, and they actually, like a pre-flight, they check and make sure all the different steps are done before they actually disperse any fuel. And then they want to do the safety check around it to make sure that there's a qualified person there, all the hoses and valves and fittings and everything are safe. And then they need to know what the emergency shutdown procedures are. I've been at a gas station when there was a refuel going on, and they had to actually come out and do an emergency shutdown on all the tanks because the guy spilled fuel. So that's for gases. When it talks about liquids, they're flammable. They have to be bonded and grounded. So you can't really just, like we go get gas for our lawnmower or something, we put it into a container setting on the ground. They've kind of gone away from metal containers to reduce the chance of static and went to plastic. And if it did explode, the plastic shrapnel wouldn't damage you as much as metal shrapnel would. But it talks about that they need to be 150 feet within the cargo area, and the hose is supposed to be within 25 foot. So you really have to park close as you can to disperse the fuel. Class 4 is flammable solids. These are some ugly suckers here. Class 5 is an oxidizer or a peroxide. And it says all loading must be within the body of the vehicle and be covered. So this isn't something that's exposed, because air can actually activate solid flammables or oxidizers. They have this chemical, it's called white phosphorus. In the military call it Willie P. They have to come up with a new name for everything. But instead of saying white phosphorus, they call it Willie P. When it's exposed to oxygen, it incinerates over 2,000 degrees. And so they use it in the tip of an ammunition round. And when they hit like a tank, when it compresses, it breaks some type of a seal and allows oxygen to enter into the projectile. It actually will melt through a tank. Instead of shooting a hole in it, it melts a hole in it. So it's some bad stuff. And they have other chemicals that are in that same category that are, the Geneva Convention doesn't even allow them to use it. So everything has to be kept dry when you're dealing with these powders and these oxidizers. Nitrate.
CNC little explanation about bonding and bonded.
Yes. So it talks about different ones like nitrate, smokeless powder, liquids and cylinders that are used to hold them. All of those have to be kept dry and secure. Class 6, poisonous. That's kind of self-explanatory. It's crazy some of the stuff that can poison you. Oxygen, too much of it can kill you. So they have poisonous, and then the class 2 of poisonous is poisonous gas. So they all have to be watertight, dust tight, be in vehicles that they're secure, and they don't let them have interconnecting packages like one valve connected to another. No foodstuffs that feed or edible is loaded within that same type of load, and no persons may be in the driver's compartment. So they don't even want, or no poison rather, they don't even want this to be enclosed into the operating area. So it has to be sealed outside of it. And there's some things in there like insecticide and different things that we use to kill off weeds and things of that nature. All of those are classified in the poison area. 7 is radioactive. It's crazy that even soil is radioactive, but there's a lot of radioactive type metals that are used in manufacturing. Radioactive contents in batteries keep those down to a maximum of how many batteries can be in one shipment. So you think of radioactive, you're thinking of like a nuclear bomb or something. It's nothing that serious. It's just materials and chemicals that are used in day-to-day manufacturing. They use them for making objects glow. So if you have things that are like dials and things that are luminous that you can see at night, that's radioactive. So there's paint that they have for those type of applications. Class 8 is corrosive, saying nitric acid at 50% or greater may not be loaded above any other package. Well, you think that'd be common sense not to put a corrosive item above something. Storage batteries must be loaded such that all batteries are protected against falling or shorting out. The scariest one, I think it's one listed here, it doesn't, is class 9. And who read the chapter and can tell me what class 9 is for some bonus points here?
Isn't it miscellaneous?
Yeah, that's the scary one, because the things that they classify as miscellaneous have to have a special handling for them. So on that placard where it says specific handling for this product, when you got a miscellaneous placard, that bad boy, it's got a lot of information in it. And I remember the one in the exercise is probably going to surprise you that it's classified as miscellaneous when we do it.
Stuff. Yeah, the food.
There's some, it doesn't fall into any of these other ones, but it's still hazardous to a person if they were to ingest it or to be exposed to an amount of it. And so it's not poison, it's not gas, it's not flammable. It doesn't meet any of these other definitions, but it's still hazardous.
What
so we
is
got a catch-all
miscellaneous?
there. The containers have to be certified through EPA and U.S. Department of Transportation. And what they talk about is if it is in a container, that it has to be large enough to contain 100% of the largest container. They have like a spill kit, and it'll be some type of absorbing type of material. Sometimes they come in these large tubes that have absorbent in them. And you have to have a dam, if you want to call it that, something that's physically in place around these containers in case one of them starts to leak, it catches it before it gets elsewhere. So it says it has to be big enough or have the capacity to absorb the largest container. So if you had a 55-gallon barrel, then you'd have to have the ability to absorb that 55 gallons, or 10% of the total units of containers, whichever is larger. So if you had more than 10 55-gallon barrels, 10% of that's 55 gallons. If you had 11, then it'd have to hold 60 some gallons. It talks about the signs, they have to be prominently located. And this material safety data sheet has a new name. I think it's just safety data sheet or safety data info. It lists everything that you have to do when you're dealing with that particular chemical. And now they're digital. They used to be in like binders and people have to turn the pages, and now wherever they deal with hazardous chemicals, there's some type of digital way that you can get to that information a lot quicker. And of course, the facility needs to be ventilated. The temperatures have to coincide with handling of that particular chemical. And they need to have self-closing fire doors. So the doors actually would close if the fire alarm went off or if somebody set off some type of an emergency. Talks about getting your certification and registration to be able to move hazardous materials. There's an inspection that the vehicle and the driver go through to get bonded. That allows them to be insured. And when it talks about bonding with containers, it's talking about being like a non-corrosive. It's not doesn't collect static, and it has to be sturdy enough to handle any type of impacts. The permits, it's saying 55 pounds of explosives is where you have to have the permit. You can haul without a permit if it's less than that. And this is talking about the crash rate for your company can't be in the lower third of the ratings, or they'll lose their ability to do that. It describes a place carding. It's a 10 3/4 by 10 3/4 diamond, and it has the different colors and the different numbers and the different pictures that show what is in that particular hazardous load. There's shipping papers that come with it that tells how it's supposed to be managed. There's supposed to be an X on your shipping paper. So if you've got, if you remember, we had 2 or 3 different types of documents that they use, depending on if you're using air or if you're using truck. But it has to actually have an X in the box that says HM for hazardous materials. And that X usually is in red, so you can pick it up a lot quicker when you're looking at documents. Okay, this one has hazardous material in it. It's marked. And so it has to give a basic description of it. And it has to be in English, legible, no abbreviations, and it's not obstructed by anything like a phone number or address. When it's a hazardous material, that has to be front and center, and we have to know what we're dealing with there. So this one gives like an example on a package of what this hazardous material looks like described. And it's got benzylquinine, whatever that is. And the class is 6.1. What was class 6?
Poison.
Poison.
And then this UN is the code for that particular chemical. And that 2 is the handling risk. So the higher the number, the higher the risk. And then you have to have emergency information like what the health hazards are for touching it or inhaling it, or if it's fire risk, and what kind of precautions you need to do to prevent any type of an incident, and then how to deal with spills or leaks. in our exercise, it's going to have these little boxes here that has the chemical and the class and its UN ID number, and then what its level of risk is. This is the 16 elements that are on a safety data sheet, a SDS. And this is what you're supposed to have access to during your orientation and in any area that you work in that may have hazardous materials. You could look under your kitchen sink or in your bathroom and pull any kind of cleaning material out. If you went to the DOD site, or you just typed in safety data sheet, Clorox bleach, it would bring up this sheet with the 16 items on how to deal with that particular cleaning agent. And I think we had an exercise in class where I said, I'm going to give you 5 minutes. You can go to next door classes. You can go down to the restroom. You can go to the janitor's closet, but go find something that you think would be hazardous. And believe it or not, chalk for the chalkboard. This is how old this exercise is. We don't have chalkboards anymore, but chalk is a hazard that when it becomes a dust, that it can be hazardous to inhale it for your lungs and what have you, respiratory. So we want to look at this exercise that gets a little deeper, if you want to call it that, into the hazmat. I put this poster out there in our announcements. So you got this to have as a quick reference for the different common chemicals and the different symboling that goes along with it. The stuff that you will be tested on is in the chapter for the textbook. So that would be, if I can get this thing to even open. Come on now. That would be from this exercise, you'll get an idea of what's on there. So these are different chemicals. And if we were doing this in class, these would all be cut apart and each table would have one, or you share it with a couple of your classmates. But if you look at this, the one I want to bring to your attention here is this class 9, which is miscellaneous. And you see it's fish meal, stabilized. And so they ground up some fish, and it's a class 3. So this is something that's not explosive or flammable, poison. It's not corrosive. It's not an oxidizer, but it's some funky stuff that you would not want to get mixed with other food products or anything else in a load. And so it's a miscellaneous classification. And
I know what acetone is.
Say again?
I know what acetone is.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's class 3, and it's a risk level 2.
Yeah, my grandfather used it on one of his cars that he was working on, and his hands were dirty. So instead of going inside to wash his hands, he just poured acetone on his hands. And he said his hands felt like they were burning. And I'm like, you're stupid.
Respect your elders. He's got old man hands. They're Superman. Well, we probably know what hydrogen peroxide is too. That's a household first aid or something for cleaning out flesh wounds and things.
That's those alcohol swabs, isn't it?
And it's used. Some people use it to dye their hair blonde. I mean, it's mercury bromides. You'll see that in like thermometers. Radioactive material. That's kind of a generic name for something. But this is just a list of some of the different chemicals to give you an idea on each of the different classifications, what they are. We look at the second part of this exercise was once you get those chemicals, each of you get one, then you're going to use these different classifications. Is it explosive? Is it a gas? Is it a flammable liquid? Is it a flammable solid? Is it an oxidizer? Is it poisonous or poisonous gas? Is it radioactive or corrosive or miscellaneous? So those were the 9 different hazardous classifications in order. But now we're going to just take a look at a couple of the placards. And you see class 1, they can also be subcategories to tell if it's like pyrotechnics, if it's fireworks, or if it's dynamite, or if it's nitroglycerin. But it gets into more detail with the classification in some of these different placards. But no matter what language it is, the pictures are supposed to tell you what the hazard is. It's supposed to give you a first indication of what the hazard is. And then we see in the class 2, what was class 2? Toxic gas, right? So this 1017 is the UN number, United Nations number. So no matter what country you're in, if you saw that number, it'd be the same chemical or the same gas or the same what have you. And because it's toxic, you get the skull and crossbones on this particular placard. This is also a class 2, and it's flammable gas. So, oxygen or acetylene or propane, and all those are all flammable gases. And it also has a number that is signed by the UN. Of course, it's a class 2. This is a non-flammable gas, and it still has to be handled with care. That gas could cause respiratory distress, or it could cause corrosion, but normally those are separated and kept secure, just like the other gases are.
Mr. Yancey,
Yeah.
what would be considered a non-flammable gas?
Well, carbon monoxide, I don't believe is flammable. And there's some that are specially formulated for processes, like maybe to keep machinery cool or to etch, that are some type of a corrosive gas. They're not necessarily flammable, but they have other properties that could be harmful if they make contact with you.
What about ammonia? Is that a non-flammable gas?
I don't believe in the ammonia is flammable, but yeah, you're right. That if it's a liquid, and if they, raise it to a certain temperature, they can change it to a gas. And yeah, that would probably be classified that way. So then we got flammable liquids, most of the different types of petroleum products. Class 4, flammable solids. And that spontaneous combustion is no joke. If it gets added with either water, carbide, my grandfather was a coal miner, and they had these lamps that they would put carbide rocks in, and they'd add water to it and then tighten it up. And when that water was mixed with this rock, it would actually make a gas that was flammable. And that's what they used for their flashlights, was this flame coming out of this little lamp on his head. In coal mines that had pockets of natural gas and all types of flammable stuff in it. But flammable solids, they can have either a liquid added to it or air, and it spontaneously will combust.
Meal ready to eat.
Yeah. Then we've got another classification of a flammable solid. It's got a different number on it. 5 is our oxidizers. There's different chemicals that are classified as an oxidizer. Basically, it's the ox part of it is when it's exposed to air, it can change the properties of metal or other materials. Most of the time it's metal, to use for etching or for machining. 6, that was a pretty self-explanatory one. I don't think anybody's ever missed poison. And the good thing about it, even on the test, you're going to see this sign and it'll say, what classification is this? Or what is this warning about? So it's going to say it in print, it's poison, or it'll have a symbol. And the classification is actually on the placard. So you don't have to try to memorize them. It's just being familiar with that there's 9 of them. And I don't know if anybody in the classes took the CLT yet. I think online I got one person that's took the CLT. And they said there was like 4 questions about the hazardous placards. 7's radioactive. It'll have this radioactive sign with the yellow background on it, and of course classification for 7. 8 is corrosive. Corrosive and oxidizers sometimes get confused. An oxidizer doesn't have the same properties as a corrosive material does. As you see in the pictures here, a corrosive material can actually burn through metal, or it can actually burn your skin or go through your bones and everything. It's pretty bad stuff. So again, you're going to get the classification number when they show you the placard, and it'll probably have a picture to tell you that it's an oxidizer. And then 9 is this who the hell knows one, the mysterious miscellaneous. And if it has properties that are identifiable, like a picture, it'll have like animal byproduct or something of that nature. They usually have that in print on that placard to tell you more detail what's in there.
So, Mayor, I have a question.
Yeah.
What's the terminology of 9? Is it other dangerous goods, hazardous, or miscellaneous? Which is the one that
It's miscellaneous.
that's the new one, new naming for it?
It's class 9 is miscellaneous, but whenever it's a miscellaneous classification, remember on the placard in the textbook, it had one box that had more detailed information about the hazard. That this is where that would come into play. I mean, if it's a flammable liquid and they got the number that tells you that it's liquid propane, that's the whole story. But if you got miscellaneous, you need to have more information so you know how to handle what's in this box or in this container. And so it will have more printed information in this area. I'm not sure what the stripes there signify, but the ones that I've seen are just completely black and white, and then they'll have a printed explanation of what's in there. There goes Kate to the Batmobile. So if we were doing this exercise in class, you would get all these placards would be on the wall, and you would have to match whether the item that you had in your hand was corrosive, so you put that on the placard, and then you'd put your chemical that you were given through a luck of the draw under whichever one of these were the classification for. So at the end, when we're doing reviews, I do the same exercise, but I don't have the classification on it. So they'd have to kind of remember from the exercise, fish meal is class 9. But it gets a little bit confusing when you get into these like neon and hydrogen peroxide, things that you don't usually deal with day to day, remembering what their classifications are. But they won't try to stump you up like that on the exam. It'll be well documented. It'll show you the classification numbers and what have you. Okay. So let's, and again, I sent you this poster. So you got that for a study aid, and it's got class 1 all the way through class 9, and explains what the different numbers mean and the different parts of the diamond, what information goes into it. Okay, so let's take a look at the video for chapter 7. I'll get this screen to cooperate with me. And of course, that's not what I needed. Let's do this out of it. Try to get that back when I need it. Okay. So here's the 20-minute video on hazardous materials. You go through this, you've been through a safety orientation. Some companies actually have them come to this site to get their need to know briefing about chemicals. So our video for chapter 7 on transportation talks about Uber's self-driving truck. We can discuss that after the quick video here.
No, this isn't a runaway truck, and no, it's not an outtake from the action movie Speed. This is a conventional 18-wheeler that drives itself thanks to a $30,000 retrofit. San Francisco startup Otto, which Uber bought this summer, made history with this truck. It completed the world's first truck autonomous delivery, carrying 50,000 cans of Budweiser from a brewery in Fort Collins, Colorado, to Colorado Springs, 120 miles away. The human drove the truck onto the highway, flipped on self-driving mode, and spent the next 2 hours of interstate chilling in the back seat. Autonomous cars make it all the buzz, but teaching trucks to drive themselves could deliver major economic and safety benefits. With 3 million drivers in the US, trucks carry 70% of American freight. But there still aren't nearly enough human drivers to do the job. Most new drivers quit within a year. And because you people can't stop buying stuff online, demand is only going to go up, and that shortage will just get worse. And roughly 400,000 trucks crash every year, killing about altogether, and that means losing a job.
Let me see if I missed
Ultimately,
where I missed it.
are testing their own autonomous semis. And the folks who need trucks to move their stuff are already interested.
And if you look at transportation, we think that self-driving technologies can improve safety, reduce emissions, and improve operational efficiencies of our shipments.
But before Otto can cash in on the benefits of robo-trucking, it has to make sure its system will handle anything that can happen on the highway. Construction, bad weather, cars spinning out.
And over the next couple of years, we'll continue to develop the technology so it's actually ready to encounter every condition on the road.
Ultimately, the answer will be to remove the human from the cab altogether, and that means losing jobs. The driver will remain a necessary part of the system, at least for the foreseeable future. But with all that extra time to relax on the road, maybe they can knock out a novel or two, or at least catch up on some sleep.
Okay, so we've seen these self-driving commercials for the new technology for cars and whatnot, but we're still a ways away from that. And I have some of my students ask, well, is driving a field that I should even consider since they're going to be replaced with self-driving trucks? And I tell them, how long do you think you're going to work? 20 years? It won't be something that's viable within 20 years. Some of the experiments that they're doing is like the big long stretches in like Montana and Nebraska, where there's hundreds of miles and it's just flat road. They've already started working with what they call trains. It's trucks that run in like a convoy. There's several trucks running together, and there's still a human being in the first one, but the other trucks follow that truck. But the problem they're running into and that they're still going to have an issue with is what they call the last mile. And that's when you get into an urban environment or even a small town in the country, and you have to negotiate different roads to get into the place, and then actually backing the trailer or parking the trailer. So it's a technology needed because the demand will never be met with people. But if that was a field that you were in, then there would be opportunities for you to learn how to do things like service the software and the systems that are in those cabs, to be able to, because they use humans to train these trucks to drive. So you actually would be out there calibrating it or making sure that if it's taking a right turn in the lane, that it actually is going the right instead of left, and measuring how quickly it slows down. There's still going to be opportunities for humans to interact with that technology. But that is something that they work a lot cheaper once you've got the initial investment of the software and hardware. There's no unions, there's no overtime, there's no body calling in sick. So it's just in our field, automation has got a lot of potential. to do a lot of things that people don't like to do.
Mr.
But
Yancey, what about the ones that the trucks that's already connected to the lines? Pretty much to the rails.
oh yeah,
Those are
Yeah.
automated, right?
I mean, like a train, basically, it only can go on rails. So wherever you're going, it's you know, the only time you need the engineer is to stop it and start it. And that's kind of the way that those long distance drivers are doing with the trucks that follow the other ones that don't have drivers in them. If the first driver stops, then all the rest of the trucks stop too. But yeah, there's drone technology. They're trying to figure out how to get major deliveries to like a focal point outside of the city limit. And then the drone can take it to the last mile to the delivery area. And they're just limited by the size of the drones and what their lift capacity is and all of that right now. They can do single deliveries, you know, 150 pounds or less, no problem. But if they're trying to bring in, say, 6 pallets at a time, then there's a problem. They don't have that capacity yet. But if you notice, most of our distribution centers and warehouses aren't in the middle of town. And they're right off of an expressway. They're outside of, you know, an urban area. So it's going to be conducive to be able to get to those hubs or those warehouses or those distribution centers.
So do you think that the self-driving tractor trailers are going to be more accurate than human? Like, because when you think about human error, if there's another car, like defensive driving, will the computers be able to respond, I guess, quicker than the human instinct would, or vice versa?
You know, there's always an opportunity for technology to fail. And say it's linked to a satellite and bad weather comes in and the signal's not what it's supposed to be. This 100% fail-proof system could be offline, and then it doesn't know that it's right against the vehicle tailgating it, and it doesn't know that there's construction ahead and all that kind of stuff. So there's some stuff they have to work through. But I'm looking at my next vehicle. My daughter's 15 and driving with permit. And she wants my vehicle instead of her mom's. I keep saying, well, wouldn't you rather have your mom's? But she wants my vehicle. So I'm looking at a replacement vehicle because she'll probably demolish that one. And all the stuff that has the assistance in it, you know, like the blind spot. And if you're going off the road, it kind of corrects it. And if you have an obstacle come in front of the vehicle, it stops, or you have something come out in behind it, it'll stop and won't let you back into it. I think all that's great, especially for an old geezer like me that doesn't have the reaction time that you youngsters do.
Not that old.
Yeah, I'm pretty damn old. But I mean, my 80-year-old dad still gets around hot rod. But it's just a human condition. Our sight and our reaction times and everything are nothing close to what automation can do. It's just having that backup, that person that says, I got somebody that's weaving in and out of traffic, and maybe the system isn't set up to, you know, we see the person in the rearview mirror pass 3 or 4 people, and we know that they're going to come in and duck in front of our truck. We can kind of prepare and react to that, whereas the system would just see this car coming in and lock up all the wheels on it, and, you know, may even cause an accident. So they're working through it. I mean, they're trying to make this artificial intelligence the new and improved labor force. And Indianapolis is one of the cities that had G5, and now China has got G6 up. But G5 is supposed to have a strong enough bandwidth that they can do all of these things, these artificial intelligent things. And they can go into a warehouse that has 20,000 moving parts on machines and have the capacity to direct what happens from a distance. You know, we could have the headquarters in St. Louis, and they could be operating a warehouse, all the machinery and everything in Indianapolis. So it's there and it's coming. I mean, you folks, it'll be in your working environment, but it'll never replace a human. I mean, it's just they're making advances, but right now the way our road systems are set up and there's such poor repair, things that it looks for like painted lines for when you leave the road and when you're going across the center lane. There's vast majority of roads that don't even have those that are legible. So it wouldn't be able to scan and be able to use its cameras and stuff to detect if it was in the center of the lane or not.
Then my thing is, what if, you know, out of nowhere they just do emergency construction, you know, and shut that lane down, and you know now you got to redirect somewhere else, but they already have in the automatic system to go this route.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm from old school where I still do have a CB. That's not in my vehicle right now. But when I was traveling before cell phones, that was sort of like a cell phone. If you had trouble, or if you want to find out the weather or what the traffic was like from the folks that were on the other side coming away from the city or going into, that was how you communicated on the road to try to get to where you're going a lot safer. The stuff that human interaction, they're still using CBs. It's not just to get out of speeding tickets. It could be just to socialize with the other drivers, just to keep them alert.
Yeah.
It could be to, hey, I just ate at this one place. You got to try the special today. I mean, things like that. That it's the human factor, and automation doesn't have that. And so, if you could say you got 10% of the fleet out there are robots, here's these human drivers trying to interact with robots that don't talk to them. And that, like in the accident situation, that's why I brought this up. You'll see drivers actually slow down and they'll block both lanes of the traffic so that the traffic ahead of them can get organized and go through the one lane. And then they find out, say, that the center lane you can get through and the left and the right lane you can't. The semis will stay in the left and right lane to keep the traffic moving to the center. So the truckers are out there trying to help traffic move, and they're using their CBs and stuff to talk to each other. You won't have that good citizen or good Samaritan kind of response from robots. They're just going to be trying to get there on time, just like everybody else, and they'll be cutting people off to get into the lane that their automations told them. The satellite said the center lane is the one that goes through, so they're just getting over in the center lane and taking up all the bandwidth there. There's just a lot of things that human driver is always going to be preferred for employers.
I just watched a tractor trailer go down the road, and I thought to myself, an automated one could never be out here because we don't even have lines on the road. It's just the road. There's no markers, there's no anything. So it couldn't ever be out this way unless I guess they had like some new kind of technology.
Well, there's some town in Arizona, and I think this is a Bill Gates, Mr. I'm getting a divorce, a Bill Gates funded thing. The road is all solar panels. All the driveways to people's houses, every side street, every alley, the state roads and the interstates going into it is all solar panels, the actual surface is. And they have like 10-foot sections. And so if it wears out or it quits generating electricity, then they can replace that one section. And they've got them to where they're durable enough that semis can go across them with a maximum load. But that one city, the roads supply all the energy for that city.
Okay.
All the lights, all the air conditioning, all the heating, and they don't have to worry about putting salt on the roads because the solar panels, they have heaters in them. And so the ice and the snow melt off of it. And they have blowers on them. If it's raining, they can actually blow the water off of the road so that it's got the best surface for driving year round on it.
You said, where's that at?
It's a town in Arizona, and I think he put close to $8 or $10 million into this project. But the last time I heard, it already paid for itself like 3 times over.
Yeah.
And people just go there to drive on it. It's the most smoothest, and it actually has lights embedded in it. So at night, the lanes are all marked by light. And if there's a hazard, like an accident or something, it actually has arrows and the road changes color saying this lane ends, it goes yellow, 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 red, 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 and then shuts the lights off to have you go into the other lane. So it's when you got an ass load of money like he does, you can afford to try those things. But how long would that take to turn all of our cities into that?
True. We talking about probably what, 20 years? Probably more than that.
They probably prioritize where it would do the most good. Like the Northeast has the biggest demand for energy, but California has the most sunshine, so it makes sense to start on the coastlines, Florida and California and Texas, and work your way in. But that would probably take like a national funding to get that done. It'd be in the trillions of dollars to make that happen. But the energy that they could get from it, and the safety and all of and the cost of upkeep on it after it was installed, when they only have to replace like a 10-foot section instead of a chuck hole getting all jacked up, they just have a truck that drives out there, picks it up and drops another one down. Nobody even gets out. I've seen how they were updating them. So
are they refurbished? Like where they can?
Yeah, they take them back in. Like if they quit generating, they can take the cells or lights are out on it. They can do that. But the thing that had the heaters in it, so they don't have any ice roads or any snow on it, and they had the fans to blow the water off the roadway, I thought that was high speed. And it's got a traction, it's got a drive to it. So that's where ingenuity and money can send you.
Well, let's start a GoFundMe account.
Yeah. Okay, so I've got our quick exercise here about. Let's see if I can get it to go to the right screen. Go to the right screen. Where did my toolbar go? Everything just disappeared on. Okay. Got this. Yeah, I can't even do PowerPoint, and we're talking about the roads that you can go ice skating on. All right. So here's what I'm looking for. That's it. I'm looking for my toolbar. It disappeared on me.
There you go.
Okay. This thing will come up right.
Oh no, that's my toolbar.
There we go. All right. So let's see if I can drag this over to the right screen. Bad thing about presenting is it switches screens on me. So let me try to get this thing to cooperate. And get that one right now. Okay.
Okay, Kate's back in the back. She's back in the back cave.
Yeah. I still cannot find my. I gotta have it hidden here somewhere. It's behind one of these screens. It's got to be on this screen with you guys. Somehow I've got this thing permanently reduced. Let me see if I can do it. No. Okay. I would say I'm embarrassed, but I've done stupider. Anyhow, I'm going to go to this way to do it then, since I can't get it to, can't get my sharing traded. All right, so this is scenario one, and it's got you shipping. We're talking about transportation here. We haven't really went over chapter 7 fully yet, but let's just see how close you guys get on this. You're moving a warehouse full of stuff here. It's 3,000 cases of Halloween costumes, and they're coming from China. And so what I want you to do is tell me what kind of transportation you would use to get it to the destination.
Water. Oh, sorry.
Coming from China, and it needs to go to California. And it's ready for shipment on the 1st of July. So when are we gonna need Halloween costumes? Like October, right?
Right.
So let's see if I can get this to work. I think I just figured out what was wrong with it. Let's go to screen 2. Okay.
And it has to be, you know, broken down and shipped to other warehouses as well, right?
Yeah, but what I'm looking for is, there we go, is what kind of transportation would I need? I got 3 months to get it there, and it's 3,000 cases. That's at least a truckload or two. But it's
Water.
China, so it's coming from China. We're going to have to use what kind of transportation?
Water,
Yeah.
Water.
ship.
Yeah. Now, if it's high value or we got low time frame to get it there.
Air.
Right. So we're
Okay.
picking it up on the 1st of July. We got till September 23rd to get it to the warehouses that it's going to. So once it's floated over here, then what kind of transportation?
It would be semi truck trailer.
For
Yeah,
that or rail.
Truck or
depending
train.
on
Yeah.
where
Rail
you're
is,
going.
rail is cheaper.
yeah.
Rail,
Well, if it's coming from the West Coast, China, the stuff comes in to the West Coast. It's going to be delivered in California, so that could probably be a 1-day run with a truck.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's look at this next one, if I can get it to go over there. All right. You're coordinating transportation for your warehouse. You decide the best transportation to receive from your supplier. You got 6 cases. That's not a whole lot of crap, right?
That's
It's coming
air.
from Switzerland, and he's in Fort Worth, Texas. It's leaving the 1st of July, and it needs to be there by the 4th of July. So we got air.
Air.
What else?
Air.
It's not going to fly into the warehouse. What else do you have to have?
Truck. I'm so
Airplane.
sorry.
Okay.
First time, maybe. No.
So, and truck is usually the answer to all of them.
Right.
What, besides the time frame, what would be another reason to use air?
Because of
Your
the
blood reason.
the cost and importance of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if it's a high value cargo, air is the most secure way to send something. Okay. Now it says 2A, you only have 2 watches and you're in Fort Worth and you need to send it to Atlanta, Georgia. And it's the 5th of July and it needs to be there by the 7th.
You would go air again, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, you could use one of those small package delivery, FedEx or what have you. But from Texas to Georgia, could you get it there by truck?
yes.
I
I mean, you
Yeah.
could, but
But
wouldn't that be
the,
a waste of, if it's only 2 items and 2 small items?
Nah, it's not about the items, it's about the demand.
the demand and the timing.
Yeah, put me behind the wheel, it'll get there.
So
By
next day service or 2-day service is what you're looking for air, right? And then truck or FedEx ground can pick it up after it gets on the ground. Okay, so our next scenario,
Okay.
you've got 600 cars coming from Germany. They need to be in New York. It's August 1st, and they need them yesterday. They said they're back ordered. So
That's
how do you get them from
great on
Germany?
water.
It's still gonna be water.
Gotta be water for
And
600
then,
cars.
They can
Truck
pick 'em
and
up- pick 'em
rail
up.
after that.
That's true. So if they're coming from Germany, Europe stuff comes in on the East Coast. So it's going to come into one of those ports in New York,
Yeah.
or, New Jersey, somewhere on that coastline. So you already got it on the right coastline. You could actually, with 600 cars, when you convert what will fit on a truck, which is usually like 8, to what fits on a rail car, which is usually
And
12.
they can double stack, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
especially those little cars.
Yeah.
So we,
So we could use rail and then truck, or we could use straight truck, because it didn't really say we need them as soon as we get them. It doesn't say.
Backward, truck would be quicker.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, if you have to move it more than 300 miles, that's a rail job. If it's just less than 300, then maybe using more trucks would be the answer to it. So now we got 3A, there's just 30 cars, and they need to go from New York to California. How we gonna do it?
I would still say
I would
truck,
even truck and rail if possible, if there's routes.
but isn't the rail longer? Like as far as drive time, like as far as,
Well, anything above 300 miles, the rail beats the time normally because they're outside the city limits. They don't have stop signs. They don't have traffic. And if it's going that far, could a truck, 30 cars is how many trucks? That's like at least 3 of them, maybe 4 to get it there. And so you got 4 trucks and we're looking at what's the most optimal. So you got to look at price and you got to look at time and feasibility. But train probably would be choice 1 because it's going all the way across country. You'd either have to have team drivers, 2 different drivers in each one of those trucks, or you have to have the 8-hour rest period after the driving.
40.
So tonnage and the space allowed, that it usually takes about 2 days to get a train together. If you had the week to do it, then that'd be the definite answer, be rail. But if it's like I need it there by September 8th or 9th, then you probably have to go truck. Now we got 10 tons of coal. It's coming from the Montana. It needs to go to Georgia.
I say train.
yeah, because you've got over almost a month to get it there, so.
Yeah, and here's something that, you know, the shape of that is like a little cube. They actually grind up coal for use in power production. It goes into hoppers and it gets self-fed into the furnace, the steam producer. But if they're cut up in 1-inch blocks or smaller, they can actually add water and send it there by pipeline. I don't know if there's a pipeline from Montana to Georgia.
That's pretty cool.
But I know from the Georgia, West Virginia coal mines and the Kentucky and Tennessee coal mines, they actually do put these in pipeline. And that way there's constant supply to the power company and there's no carbon emissions. It's just they mix it with water and then they pressurize this slurry is what they call it when they got water mixed with solids. And they put it through the pipeline, and it when it gets to the other end, they have a hopper that it actually shakes them and stuff when it comes out of the pipe to kind of get most of the moisture off of it. But it's going in a furnace, so who cares? But yeah, this one will probably be rail. But 10 tons of coal, you figure a pickup truck can hold a half a ton. It's a half ton. That's the standard size of most pickup trucks. So if you put it on a coal truck, like a dump truck that normally has like a 30-ton capacity, one dump truck or one coal truck could actually take it to them. But seldom would you ever see an order for just 10 tons of coal. You know, it'd probably be more like 100 tons or 1,000 tons or what have you. I'm from, you know, the foot mountains of the Appalachians, and they still heat with wood and coal down there. A ton of coal is about knee high to you and about 4 foot out. It's not a big pile. It's a pretty heavy rock, the coal is. But you could actually even put this, I mean, it's not as a precious material to put in for a flight. But if you had enough time, barging or sending it by river, if there was a waterway, was how normally this stuff's sent, either by rail or by water. So in this instance, since it's only 10 tons, I think a truck would take care of the problem. Now you folks tell me this one. You got crude oil coming from Prudhoe Bay in Alaska, and it needs to go to Valdez, Alaska. How does it get there?
Water.
I was going to say the Alaskan oil pipeline.
Yeah, couldn't they just do the pipeline?
Yeah, I mean, that's what Alaska is famous for, is the Alaskan pipeline. And that Oscar is like the Niagara Falls of pipelines, the amount of oil that they can move through that bad Oscar. And they haven't had that many incidents with it. They have sensors that tell if they're leaking or if there's been some type of wildlife or car accident or something that's damaged it, and they're right on it. They have helicopters that fly the length of that about every 2 or 3 hours just to check for obstructions or any kind of defects. And they have like a radar that or x-ray that checks for stress cracks and for the seals and all that stuff when they're flying the length of this. So it's been there since the 60s and it's still pumping today. Okay, so that kind of gave you an idea of application on what kind of stuff that we use for transportation. This, I think I closed my book. What the textbook has in it is it's comparing the different types of transportation, the pros and cons for them. I think I'm over on this screen. Okay. I think this is how I want to do it. All right. So let's just blow through those pretty quick. When it talks about truck, this is most commonly used. About 70% of all transportation is done by truck. And so if you're going to use any multimodal, that's what they classify if you use it with a rail or with air or with water. It's still part of the transportation in any of those other 3 different types of transportation. It gets added. Now, whether it's a semi or a box truck or what have you, that all depends on the distance and the freight. So our roadways, we have some of the most envious roadways on the planet. We have the straightest interstates to get you from one major urban area to the next. And they're kept up relatively well by the gas taxes that we pay when we purchase gas. So for the plus, trucks are the most versatile. They're usually the least expensive when the move is under 300 miles. They're usually the quickest ground way to move in type of a product. And as far as scheduling, they can go at any time, not like aircraft or trains or ships. And as far as availability, there's a lot more truck companies than there are train or aircraft or shipping. So it's your go-to. It's like the default is truck. When we look at air, it's the fastest way to move anything. It's the only way that you can guarantee same day anywhere in the US. It's the only way that you can do 2-day anywhere in the world. Most expensive because it has large overhead. You got these airports and terminals and maintenance and fuel. It's just ugly how much it costs per mile to fly. But when you're dealing with a perishable item, say flowers or food that has to be there within 24 hours to get it to market and make it, have enough time to sell it to your consumers, air is the way to go. And they save a lot of money because the majority of the freight that's moved by air is in the belly of passenger aircraft. So they're already making their money on the ticket that they sold you. They can charge people who want to ship flowers or something across the planet or across the US a relatively lower rate than just straight up commercial aircraft that moves freight and cargo. About 90% of the stuff that's flown is in the belly of these people movers. The bad part is, like during the pandemic when people weren't flying, it cost you more to get your stuff because then the only thing that was on these planes was product, not people. It's the most secure. There's not a whole lot of hijacking. So when you're sending high value stuff, that's the right way to go. Yeah, go ahead.
So like things like, say, you were talking about perishable food and stuff. Say you got bananas coming from, I don't know, Mexico. Do they fly like on DHL plane? I have never seen a cargo plane full of bananas or pineapples or something like that. So how are they on special ones, or are they still in these like commercialized bellies?
just like the trucks that have trailers that have like refrigeration unit for moving perishables. And then if you've got, say, a chemical that has to maintain room temperature, there's even trailers that have heat in them. And there's static-free environments and all that. Well, aircraft is the same thing. They have the containers that they load. In this picture, it shows one of those containers. And that is a what? Remember, a semi is a 40-foot container, FTU, right? What's aircraft? It's a 20-foot container. So 2 of these fill up a semi. And so those containers can be refrigerated. They can be climate controlled. So if you're sending bananas, they're probably going to show up in a container like this, where it's the humidity and the temperature has been controlled. And they, of course, ship them green, so they're not damaged in transport. Tomatoes is the same thing. They ship those green. And then once they get them to a warehouse, they chemically ripen them. They expose them to gas that quickens the pace for them to ripen. But yeah, I've seen entire aircraft of just perishables. It may not just be bananas, but they'll have you know, pineapples. They'll have tomatoes and other things that come from like Brazil. Or when it's winter here, it's summer in their growing season, and so we buy all of our food from them during that time. When it's winter there, we're exporting food to them from our growing season. But yeah, they. Probably the strangest thing I saw was an airplane full of flowers, and you'll see many of them landing around Mother's Day and around Valentine's Day, just plane loads of flowers, because there's certain places like in Hawaii and Peru that have this volcanic ash that supposedly makes the most beautiful flowers and the longest lasting flowers. So they that's where we import them, the majority of those.
Yes, I think the choice of like air is, as you said in the book, is like something really time based and valuable. For example, like Kate, for example, for the bananas, if they have like, if you don't necessity for them right away, we can use other. It's like there's a lot of criteria that in there that make you select which mode you're gonna see. In a big time based is air with value, but if the bananas, they're still green, for instance, or any product that's still green, and they can be on like on trucks or something, and they're gonna be saving money. I mean, you can, that's the cost and the money and the time, all of those and other criteria that make you choose the right mode of transportation or intermodal.
Well, if you look at it this way, if you buy a tomato at your local market in July, you're going to pay like 29 cents a pound. If you buy a tomato in November or December at your local market, you're going to pay $2.50 a pound. So the difference is the cost to get it to you. And so you're paying for that air freight to have those fresh vegetables year round. I mean, yeah, we got greenhouses and all that kind of stuff that are here year round, but flowers, when it's Valentine's Day, you're paying $24. No, you're paying $124 for 12 roses. Whereas if we bought them at a different time when they were in season, I could buy them from a local farmer. I'd probably pay 10 cents a piece for them. So it's when the demand is high enough to justify the cost of air freight is when it's used. So another disadvantage it talks about is their max loads that they can carry. You'd have to have these super large cargo planes to compete with what a truck can carry, or a train or a ship. But that they're dependable, like every day at noon, something flies into Hawaii, and then every day at midnight, that same plane is in Hawaii. So you got something coming or going to, and it's, unless weather interferes, you got a pretty reliable source within one day's delivery. Okay, so the next one's rail. Rail, believe it or not, and this is kind of in sequence as to the most popular and the highest used. You got trucks first, then you got air second, and now we got rail that's third. And so it's kind of the same place when it comes to what their their speed is. They're third. When it comes to their cost, they're third. So you got air that's the most expensive, then truck, then train. It's cheaper than trucks. But capacity, there is a major plus there when we needed those 600 cars moved. Just what they can do. And plus they can move containers, which are also the trailers for semis. They can carry 2 high, and each one of those cars can carry 4, 2 wide and 2 high. So depending on where it's going and what's in it, if they're empty, they just stack them deep. If they're full, then they got to worry about the weight capacity of the rail line. But it says it takes about 14% of all goods are transported by rail. So there's a lot of good things when it comes to that. They don't burn as much fuel. They don't cause traffic jams. They're not involved in a lot of accidents. Depending
Less
on
workers.
less in labor involved, yeah. But the bad things, if you don't have rail service, if it's not coming into a major metropolitan area, you can't use it. I mean, if the nearest rail is 300 miles away, unless you went from New York to California and now it's 300 miles, it's kind of taking it off the rail and putting it on a truck. The time that it takes to get that train broke apart where you can get to each one of those containers, it makes it inefficient. So when it comes to the service being available everywhere, it's not, whereas for a truck and most aircraft, it is. And then the time. So if it's over 300 miles, it starts looking like a better option. And if you've got more than like 3 days, because it's going to probably take a day to put a train together to get 100 cars all latched together and head in the same direction. And then it's probably going to take a day to divide them up and decide where those separate cars go. So even though it may only take them a day to get across the country, you got the downtime when it comes to adding cars or taking cars off of it. Cost-wise, probably about 1/10 of what truck costs. And each one of those rail cars hauls about 2.5 times to 4 times as much as a truck does. But if you've got, say, hazardous cargo, say you've got these big tanks of oxidized or poisonous or chemicals, most rail run outside of congested areas, and they can haul more of it. A truck is limited to what its load capacity is. Plus, it's limited by their licensing or what they're permitted to take. So, say a truck can only take 5,000 pounds of flammable liquid, but it wastes another 60,000 pounds that it could have added to that trailer. But it's capped at a certain amount because only so much hazardous material can go in one load. A train doesn't have that kind of kick. It can have car after car after car of hazardous material. And I got to see that up front and close. When I was a private, I lived in a trailer park that was right next to the rails outside of Fort Knox. And a train derailed, and they had cars and cars full of different types of chemicals, and a couple of them ruptured, and they came and banged on the door saying, "You got to go right now, leave." They made us leave our pets. They made us leave our cars. They had a bus. They were putting everybody on the bus to get them away from that accident. And it took like 3 days before we could even find out if our animals were still alive, or if the windows and stuff were all left down in our houses and in our cars and stuff. But the train company, the rail company, paid severances for any of our losses because of the accident. But that was crazy. You were in the middle of it's 2 a.m. in the morning, you're sleeping, and there's a train accident that's 200 yards from you that could kill you. Just the hazardous material that was on there. They never did tell us exactly what it was, but it was on its way to a military warehouse. So it was kind of hush hush what was in there.
Was it the
Oh.
police that knocked on your door to wake you up, or was it the fire
It
department?
was the fire department, and they had some type of search and rescue, but the buses were coming from the fort. They were military buses. And I think we were only about 2 miles off post. We weren't actually on the base. And they moved everybody 20 miles away from there. So there was like a 20-mile circle around that accident that was evacuated. Everybody was evacuated. We slept in a schoolhouse one night, and the next night we were in Louisville. They kept moving us farther and farther away from it. We slept at the baseball stadium, and we're like, do we just like get a room? I'd like to wash my butt and maybe find out, let my family know that I'm alive and all that. It's weird when there's emergencies like that. They didn't have food for us or anything. It was just a weird situation. But yeah, that was my first encounter with rail and hazards of the rail. So then we got water.
That means they have no limits of whatsoever, like they can carry whatever they like, whatever hazardous material quantity they can.
They make those cars very sturdy, and they have not only the steel, around it, but inside they're capsulated where it's contained. And supposedly there's some kind of a gel mixture or something that's within an inner wall that's supposed to like dam up the hole or to keep the stuff from leaking out. They're making them safer, but the problem is it costs so much to maintain those rails that if you've got like the cross ties, the wood that's under the rails, if they deteriorate, then the train can rock when it goes over it. And if a lot of those cars start rocking, that's what happened in that situation, is that so many of those cars went over there and were moving that it actually caused it to flip. But that's where the major part is the condition of the rails that they run on. So we got water, very inexpensive. It's pennies on the dollar compared to other ways to ship. And we're talking about either the blue water is what they call the river barges and inland ships, or the seagoing container ships. Right now, the average size container ship can hold about 20,000 containers. China has super container ships that can hold 80,000 containers. That's 80,000 semi-trucks worth of stuff. So they have ports that are specially designed and deep enough that when they load those container ships with 80,000 containers of stuff that we're buying, it saves them. That's like 4 shiploads or 5 shiploads on one dime. The bad part is when they get here, I think
There's
we only
nowhere
have
for them to dock, right?
Yeah, there's only 2 ports that they.
Yeah.
China is paying for these ports to be dug out. They're dredging them and making them deeper because their ships can't come in to be unloaded. They actually have to stop out at sea and have smaller ships come out, and they offload onto the smaller ships, and then the smaller ships go to our ports to be unloaded. So that extra step is adding time, and it gets handled again. It could be damage to the freight, loss to the freight. And so China is investing in digging those ports out so their bigger ships can get there. They build these in a couple countries. I think Switzerland builds these big container ships, and South Korea. And we've got several of those are on order for the U.S. carriers. They want to get into that same size ship. So probably all of our ports in the short run will be dug out where any size ship can go in there. And for 60, 70 years, they were deep enough. And now that we've got bigger and bigger ships, we can't service them. It's just amazing how much freight goes on those container ships and how they keep track of all the manifest, and everything's digitized so they can check all the way down to a package inside a container on a container ship 24/7. So the security on them are pretty tight. But so the good thing is you can ship in bulk. It's very inexpensive. It's the only way you're going to get any large order over to Europe or to China. The bad thing is it takes about 2 weeks to come from Europe or to come from China. Once it gets here, all the containers have to be unloaded, inspected, sorted. So it's probably going to spend another 2 or 3 days at the port. Bad weather can keep that ship from sailing. It could slow it down. You could lose some stuff at sea. There has been containers that they lost at sea. But as far as international transportation, that is the go-to, is these ships. There's nothing else that's even close to it.
Well, you saw that cargo ship that was seized in Egypt because it got stuck there, and now they want like $1 billion in compensation because it blocked up the canal.
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna get it though.
So what happens to all the I guess the products on the cargo ship that have been sitting there for God knows how long?
They, you hear about these stores that have like unclaimed freight. These ports, they get containers that, it has to be claimed. And within that 2 weeks, either something's changed where the folks who ordered it, now they're not honoring the payment of it, or they haven't come and picked it up. They get put in like a holding area for a time period. They're getting charged, dunnage, because we're supplying them a park spot for their container that hasn't been picked up. But at some point in time, it becomes the property of that port. And then they do auctions where you've seen these different shows where they do rental spaces that are been abandoned. People can auction.
Storage wars.
They do that for containers. And you could get a whole container of like party favors or bicycles or something. And some of those containers, the people that are bidding try to like scan them and find out what was supposed to be in there. And they don't know what condition it is, but for the most part, they know that it's like medical supplies or something like that. And they'll go bid on them. But it's still by far the largest by volume. Most of the stuff that is actually moved through transportation is on ships, because there's 20,000 semis on one ship, and these ships come in by the dozens every hour on every port. So this is it talks about, this has got some old numbers from 2011. Los Angeles and Long Beach were the gateways for Asia. Accounted for a third of all marine container traffic in the U.S. Now Texas has got in it, and Louisiana. Try to get away from all that traffic in California, but it's just amazing. They send cars over in those containers.
Yeah,
it's amazing the stuff that comes in on those ships. Let's see. It talks about ocean carrying, but it also had these other classifications of ships. The container ships carry the 20 or the 40-foot containers. Then we got bulk carriers, and it's like a tanker that's moving crude oil, or it could be something that's moving grain, like we send a whole shipload of just one thing. Then we got ro-ro vessels, that's roll on, roll off. And so it could be anything that's motorized, like cars or trucks or whatever. And they have a very famous, if you want to call it a ferrying service, where these ro-ros pick up a train in Seattle or British Columbia. And this train breaks down into like rows of cars, like 10 or 20 cars per row on a ship. And then the ship sails to Alaska. The train pulls back off and reconnects. The ship comes around to the next port in Alaska, because there's not roads everywhere in Alaska, and there's not rail everywhere in Alaska. They have to sail them to the next section of rail so that the train can get back on and go on up north into Alaska. And then coming back, it's the same thing, that a series of these trains get back on that ro-ro, and it floats them back to British Columbia so they can bring stuff down to the lower 48. this it talks about the advantages being its the capacity and the cost. And then the bad part is weather, and you have to be somewhere near a body of water. They talk about if Indianapolis had a river going through it that was negotiable by ships, that this would be the transportation center of the universe. We have the outstanding roadways, we have outstanding air and rail and pipeline. The only thing that we're short on in Indianapolis is ships. But in Indiana, there's 4 ports, and those 4 ports are in the top 5 for inland ports. So there's ports on the east, west coast all around, but inland in the continental United States, we have number 1, 2, 3, and 4 out of the top 5 in Indianapolis, in Indiana. So it's mainly because of where we're geographically located. That stuff comes in here to be distributed to the west coast or east coast or north or south. And the number 1 customer, China, for all 4 of those ports. They buy grain and they buy bulk wood and different types of raw materials to send back to China. And then their ships come through river locks and everything to get to all those 4 different ports. And then it gets warehoused in Plainfield or somewhere in Indiana until it gets to its final destination. Pipelines, it talks about, let's see if I'm sharing the right screen. I guess I am.
Just quick question, Mr. Yancey, difference between bulk carriers and break bulk carriers.
Okay, so a bulk carrier is usually one product, and it can be oil, it can be grain, it can be anything of that nature. When it's a break bulk, it's a ships that accommodate stuff that's too big to go in a container. So it could be, say, a huge tractor, combine or something. It could be furniture that's too big to fit in, be some big ass furniture, but or raw goods like timber that's too big to fit into a container. It's basically like a flat car on a rail where they can put anything they want on it. And so those break bulks are like a flat deck that they put all these odd different shaped cargo on. And a lot of times it looks similar to a barge, but they're huge. They could put a barge on there if they wanted to. So pipelines, it's amazing how these things work. It costs a lot of money to make them, to dig the hole or to suspend them. You got to have property right away to go through different people's property. You got to lease it or get permits to dig the hole and then bury it. You got to go through national, federal lands. You got to get permits for that. Like the XL pipeline, which we kind of did Canada pretty crappy about that. That their oil that they export was coming from Canada to the different ports in Louisiana, Texas, by truck. And so to try to reduce the cost of transportation, carbon emissions, all of that, they designed the pipeline to bring that oil in. And it's halfway to where it's supposed to be, and all of a sudden we changed our mind. No, we don't want your pipeline. And so all of that money that Canada's invested in getting that pipeline as far as it has is wasted. And we gave them our word basically that said, yeah, you can have access all the way to these ports in Louisiana where the refineries and stuff are. And we will lease you that space to let it go there. So not even in the political arena, I just don't think that it makes good sense not to honor our obligation to our closest neighbor to the north. And the benefits we have is we have access to their oil. We can buy it at a reduced cost. And it takes all those trucks off the road that are shipping that oil from Canada down to the refineries. So
is that the same pipeline that the governor of Michigan decided that they no longer wanted to have run through Michigan?
the federal level is who stopped it. I mean, the states, if the federal government says we're going to abide by our agreement with Canada, they just say tough crap, we're running it through there. But in the majority of it is federal land that it's going through. So we weren't asking private owners to vacate their family farms to run a pipeline through. But once the pipe's buried, you can utilize the land for whatever you want. And these pipes last, a century or two before they need any kind of major repair. But it's a political thing. People that think environmentally would want a pipeline because that's all that carbon emissions gone. You don't have all these trucks on the road, accidents with the trucks, all this stuff. But their beef is that they had to disturb the land to put the pipe in it, and then there's oil that's running underground. There's already oil underground. That's where it came from. But yeah, I don't follow the political.
Didn't you say this also provides like natural habitats for certain types of animals and stuff because it provides them like warmth and stuff during the cold months and everything?
Yeah. I mean, all the hoopla that they had about the Alaskan pipeline, now endangered species are off the list basically because they've adapted to it and they use it for shelter and for nesting and for heat, for their protection of the elements and all that kind of stuff. But the pipelines, getting back to it, is primarily for petroleum products. But if you went to Cincinnati and you had a diagram of all the pipes that go through there, if you went to Indianapolis, you had a diagram of all the pipes that go through there. They move things like health and beauty aids, shampoo and cleaning products. They pipe it from where they mix the chemicals to a major bottling complex where they package and ship out all the finished product. In Florida,
the orange juice.
When the harvest is in, they got these hundreds of thousands of acres of oranges that are all looking for a place to go, and they will mass crush them, or they'll like process them into juice, or they'll grind them down or whatever, and then they send them out of the fields into these different. They'll send them to a port, and they'll take a shipload of orange juice somewhere. But most of the time, orange juice is frozen once they've processed it, if it's going to be for long-term sale. So they send these pipe loads of this orange juice into freezing facilities that actually prepare it for sale. But the repressuring is sort of like a air traffic controller. They could have a pipe of oil coming from Canada, and when it gets to say Ohio or Indiana or whatever, it goes through a recharge station that adds more pressure to the pipe to keep that oil moving. But let's say they didn't all want it to go to Louisiana, they wanted some to go to Texas. Well, we have these valves that they can change the direction or flow, whatever's coming through a pipe, and send it through a different pipe that's going to that Texas destination. And so there's hundreds of thousands of miles of pipe in Indianapolis and in Cincinnati, just these two close cities that keep a lot of traffic off the road, and they're safe. They don't have operators, so there's a low cost. Once they get in the ground, it's just ridiculously cheap to put stuff through pipeline. The bad part is if you don't have a pipe, you can't use the pipeline. And there are huge startup costs, like to get the land and to get the pipes actually put in the ground. But once they're in there, I mean, it is, the majority of them are privately owned or they're owned by the government. They're owned by the oil companies or they're owned by the government. But if you had a process that you needed to move a product that could be liquefied or it could be ground up into small enough, like grain, they use pipelines to move grain too, then this would be for a long-term investment, something that would pay back within 5 or 10 years. You'd have it paid for, and then you're getting the stuff basically free moved. So then we transitioned into intermodal, where you're using a truck plus a train or aircraft or a ship. And it gets in greater detail in chapter 8 on the different modes that they use for making transportation decisions. You have to figure out, is it a time thing? Is it a capacity thing? Is it a regular delivery? I mean, what is the primary focus of the shipment? And then that's where you make your decision. Or availability. Say when we had this bad weather, air was out of the question. You couldn't use it for anything. And the rail became the backup to these long distance hauls. When the weather freezes up all your ports, shipping becomes a non-available. And so air became the primary or rail. So a lot of it has to do with the situation or what, if you got water or rail or an airport available. So it's always go back to default, which is trucks. This diagram, I don't know if I can make that bigger, kind of gives you the conversions of what the capacities are for the different modes of transportation. This barge says it's equal to, they put 15 barges in a tow, and each one of those holds, it's talking gallons, 15 tons. That's what I was looking for, was a ton. And then you got the two different types of cars. You got a hopper car and a double stack. 100 tons for the hopper car, and it's equivalent to 2 to 4 trucks. That barge is equivalent to like 57 trucks, semi-step trailers. Then you got a 100-car train, and it's equivalent to 385 semis would be off the road by one train running. You got your semi truck. Then you got the Panzec container ship. These are different classifications. So that one is equal to 1,160 semi trucks. So that's basically how many containers it carries. And then you've got the VLCC, which holds 9,332 containers or semi trucks. And so you see that China 80,000 container ship, 10 of those. It would take 10 of those to haul that aircraft. And then it's got one of the heavier lift aircraft, 747, is equal to 5 truckloads of stuff. So that's 5 semi-loads of flowers or tomatoes or bananas or whatever on one of those cargo planes. Here's something that is ways that we can reduce costs. One is consolidate your shipments and put more weight in it to get the most bang for that container or that semi or what have you. Reduce the number of pickups. So instead of having it picked up Monday through Friday, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, that just took 40% of your transportation cost out. Decrease the number of parcels by consolidating shipments. So if I send something to Kansas City and then something to California, I could put both of those on one trailer and just have a stop. Decrease the billing and collecting costs by consolidating shipments. So if I got more than one customer, it'd be the same thing because I've got one truck that's being paid and the driver to get that shipment out there. I can have less costs involved in it. This talks about what was there was some the legal forms of transportation. You got common carriers. These are folks that take your stuff anywhere, anytime for anybody. Then you got private, so that's who you would hire if you were in a transportation situation. Then you got private carriers. They only deliver for their company. So like a Walmart semi doesn't pick up other people's stuff. Then we got contracted carriers. These operate with selective bias and they charge variable rates to customers based on negotiated terms. So I could have a trucking company that is my primary carrier. I'm in a contract with them, and they could go to another customer and say, well, we'll call your stuff, but we have our first priority to our contractors. And normally you're going to pay more because you haven't had a chance. I negotiated for a whole year what I wanted to pay for our deliveries. If I'm just looking for somebody and it's a one-off time to use them, they're probably going to charge me a lot more because I'm not return customer type material. And then you got exempt carriers. They're not regulated by federal or state mandates. It's usually carrying fish or agriculture going from the fields to the market. They normally are exempt from having permits and the taxes and all this kind of stuff because their primary business is not transportation. It's just moving their finished product to market. Then you got line haul carriers, and those are folks who take long distance runs. They stop at different break bulk places like a hub. So if I'm taking Indiana watermelons to California, I may get to to St. Louis and drop off a couple pallet loads, and a new driver takes over, and then they take it to Colorado. They drop off a couple pallet loads, and then a new driver takes over. So these line hauls are, instead of driving straight to California, I'm going to drive my 250 miles, and then I'm going to be home that night back at my home base. The next driver picks it up where I left it. He takes it 250 miles, 300 miles, and then he's home that night, or she is, to go. And so it kind of is a leapfrog kind of thing. It's just freight forwarders. This is an area of opportunity for this degree that you're earning. Basically, you're the person that finds ships to haul things to different countries, or you're the person that works with customs when it comes into our country, or to deal with customs for China or Korea or Malaysia or whatever. You become an expert in what that country's requirements are. Now, since I have a product that I ship everywhere, I can't invest in knowing what every one of those different countries' import-export laws are, or special provisions for sending hazardous material, or how do I get my containers all the way to my customer. So I contract a freight forwarder. It's sort of like having your taxes done. It gets more complex. You ask an expert to do it. But these freight forwarders, they work out of houses, and they have relationships with these different transportation companies. And you see here that there are some major companies like UPS, FedEx. They have freight forwarders because that's the type of business that they're involved in. But if you're, say, a private company and you don't deal with transportation that often, you want to have a relationship with a freight forwarder that takes care of all your needs for that. And say I'm in California, I just took a truckload of stuff there. Now I want to come back. I'm a private driver. I can contact a freight forwarder and say, I'm in California, I'm headed back to Indianapolis. What do you got? And they will find you a return load so you can make money on the backhaul. That's where most of the profit's made. Whenever I contract a truck to take that trailer to California, I'm paying for that return trip too. They're charging me miles and time and use of that truck both ways. And so if I get to the other end, and whatever I get is going to be a good deal for them, because I'm already getting paid to drive back empty. So if I got a full trailer, I'll give you a 50% discount. Well, that's how these freight forwarders can make their money, and how they help the drivers and they help the company is they charge them 80% of what it would cost them to ship it. Then they pay you the 50%. The freight forwarders made 30%. They didn't touch anything. They didn't move anything. So we're designing a course to prepare you to get your freight forwarders certification because we know that's such a high demand, high reward type field. Next, flat out services, that's going to be with aircraft. And that's usually has a limit on the amount of weight that can be in it. It's usually single item shipments that are less than 150 pounds. and you're going to pay a premium. You're going to pay more money. Let's see. This is getting into more definitions about how we measure quality and what they call the perfect route percentage. That's this last one. That says everything went exactly as planned. The time that it took, you promised it got there. There was no damage to the product. It was like new when it got to your customer. You delivered on time. You stayed within the confines of the billing that you said you were going to. You didn't give them any upcharges or anything. And so that is the target, is to make the perfect route. And so every time you do that, you get credit for it. And so if you've got like a 90% perfect route rating, then you can start asking for more money because they know that you are the real deal, that you're going to get their freight there in top condition, on time, and with all the promises made, you're going to deliver.
Like you got a good track record and a good resume.
Yeah,
much.
your reputation is worth money.
Yeah.
And so if you've got less than a perfect, then, you know, like you're the second choice, you're on the bench,
Yeah.
then you're probably not going to get the highest premium. And then if you're the worst dude, if you're the mad dog behind the wheel, I'll do it for free. Just let me crush your stuff.
Right.
But these are all the different things on that gray card to get to the perfect shipment. They got claims free.
Of course, what's the difference between the bottom two, perfect delivery percentage and perfect route percentage? What's the difference? Is that the same thing? We're talking the same thing?
Well, one of them is talking about the route that you didn't have any delays and that you did it on time. This perfect delivery percentage is probably what I was describing to you more so. That encompasses everything. It
Everything,
encompasses, there was no damaging to it. All the documentation was right. The driver and everything worked like they were supposed to. This is just the perfect route. Like you didn't get caught up in traffic. You didn't have to switch over to a new driver because of a breakdown or anything of that nature. So you got claims-free shipment. That's important. And you can Google these different transport providers, and they will tell you what their claims percentage is. So if they damage freight every time that they have to pay, that goes against them. Damage-free shipment percentage. This could be something that's not even a claim. It could just say, hey, this showed up and my boxes were dirty and dented. Then we got distance between accidents. So your safety record has to do with what your rating is too. And a lot of times it may not even be your fault. You could have another vehicle hit you or whatever, but they count them all. And because that accident is going to be a delay, and it could be damage to whatever you're carrying in the trailer or on the aircraft or in the ship or on the train. And you can imagine that there's probably a lot higher numbers for aircraft and for rail, that they have a lot higher safety, on-time delivery, perfect routes, all that, than the trucks do, because the trucks have to swim with all of us drivers out there in the wild, and they have to deal with traffic and they have to deal with construction. That's stuff the aircraft and ships and rail don't have to. So they have a different like skew or a different rating scale for trucks versus the other modes of transportation. Your on-time delivery comes into play, and then your on-time departure. I think the last 2 or 3 years, aircraft on-time flights have dropped down below 40%. So
down.
Of you getting on a plane when they say you're going to and getting to where you're supposed to be is about a 40% chance.
Oh,
it's
wow.
like a crapshoot. And
I see that just with all the delays that they have all of a sudden.
And a lot of times they'll have, say, a flight from Indy to Chicago, leaves every half hour. They got 5 passengers. Like, no, we're not going to run that one. There's the next one that's got 10 seats on it. We'll just move them to that. And so there's things behind the scenes we don't know that they're consolidating or they're say a weather issue. They don't want to fly into fog or rain or snow or whatever. But for the most part, the federal government had to get involved in them overbooking. In other words, they'd have 100 seats and they'd sell 200, and then 200 people show up. And they're like, I guess you guys are going to be delayed, or you're going to be sat on the next flight because we weren't expecting you all to show up.
Right.
Of course, you can get a seat, an exact seat, and that's the one you're going to have when you fly out. But a lot of times you can get like last minute cancellation discounts or standby discounts, and they sell those too. And so some people get unhappy when they all packed up and ready to go, you know, get
Or they just put you on hold and say, yeah, we got another plane coming, so just be patient.
There's been a couple times where they say, who would take a hotel on us and we give you a free future flight if you wait and fly out tomorrow. There's been a couple times I've been offered that, and I'm like, I'm not in a hurry, thanks, give me. So they try to work with you. I've seen some crazy stuff, some videos where they're dragging families off of planes because a 2-year-old won't wear a mask.
Yeah.
A 2-year-old to do anything. Ask any parent. You can't get a 2-year-old to do a damn thing, let alone keep a mask on them. But hopefully we're getting through that stuff. So this talks about the different information for different modes. And one of the things that is being taught in the 4-year level for transportation is they added information in there as a mode of transportation. We don't teach that because even though it is a major part of it, data has a lot to do with making the decision on what mode of transportation. And so if you don't have information like availability of the routes, if there's any kind of delays or construction, if you don't have like where's the nearest airfield, how long would it take to get it off of there to the final customer, you don't have all of that data like in a transportation management system, then you really are flying blind. And so most transportation managers have that available to them. So information has become like the 6th type of transportation. And a lot of the stuff that we send is information. So if we're selling like software or apps or any kind of data, it's sent through technology. It's actually transported from the person who owns it to the customer who's buying it. Say digital sales like music and movies and all that stuff. That is information type transportation. So it's something that's taught at your bachelor level. They get into a whole other arena there. But we try to stay with the physical where drivers are involved in it and there's hands-on type stuff that gets with it. There is different types of restrictions, like I know in some waterways in Canada, you can't have a gas operated boat. And so if you're getting a delivery, say that would come in by ship, it has to be on some kind of electrically powered or wind powered boat to go to these different islands in Canada. There's just some strange things. So you have to really know what kind of restrictions there are at the port of entry, or if and this mentions things like narrow roads and low bridges, weight restrictions. And if you have a transportation management software package, all of this stuff's tied into like a GPS that tells the route. They'll map it out electronically, and it'll actually look at what the width of the road is and the height of the bridges and all that stuff, so they can tell if your truck could go on that route. Sometimes they're not updated, where roundabouts that are too small for semis to go around are in your route, and they just have to drive right through them. So having this software and having that information is vital to be able to pick which way you're going to go. Some of the different vehicle configurations I've seen for like rail, you probably got 10 different types of cars that you can pick from on moving your product. Same thing with trucks. You have all these different types of trailers that can be loaded from the top, loaded from the side, of course, from the back, that can be unloaded from the bottom. So you can drive over some type of like bin and drop your grain or your coal or whatever. It doesn't have to go up any kind of conveyor to unload it, or you could just dump it. But knowing what the product is and who the customer is could lead you to if there's any kind of special trailer or cars that you have to involve in it. Just one other area here, I think we're back into freight documentation. We talked about that earlier about the different types of documents that are involved in handling product. But this gets into finding out what the rate is, if it's a flat rate per mile or per pound, if it's more to expedite it, to get it there overnight or as soon as possible. But it has some guidelines like historic or projected shipping volume. So it's of course going to cost you more to move things around holidays when retailers are trying to get their shelves restocked, and you want to have something moved. There's fewer trucks or fewer rail or air available. The delivery times, if it's in the middle of a rush hour and it has to be there, then you're probably going to have to pay a different rate for that because they're going to probably leave several hours earlier to get there on that deal with the traffic. But there's like even the payment terms, if it's cash or if it's 90 days, same as cash, or if it's I pay on delivery, or I get a discount if I pay in cash. All of those things have to be worked out in the documentation, because if it's not written down, it didn't happen. If you had a verbal something, you say, well, send me that in an email or a text so I have something in writing that, you know, explains all the requirements. This talks about the bananas. Somebody mentioned those earlier about how they're moved green and then they are ripened when they get to the end. So that's interesting reading to look at. But that's chapter 7 in a nut drill. So we've got 2 more chapters. We've got chapter 8, which is dispatch and tracking. And then we got chapter 9, which is conversion and measurement. 9 is relatively quick. There's only one video for next week. It's under chapter 8. And then we'll take time to look at getting you ready for the CLT. I can tell you that this week, let me go ahead and stop our recording here. Did I stop the recording? Okay. Okay. So I've had probably 15 people send me their CLA scores this week. So something's breaking loose where either people are saying, the heck with it, I'm going to go into a local Ivy Tech. Like I seen a couple of notes from you folks. You finally got frustrated and said, I'll just go into an Ivy Tech.
Yeah,
Or they finally got Proctor U cooperating with them. This is by far the worst semester we've ever had with Proctor U in MSSC. I think what I've learned from this semester is I'm going to have students the first week do a share screen individually with me to make sure that they go through signing up properly and they pick the right test center, and that they when they're going to Proctor U, that they put the right sign in for MSSC and Proctor U. And then when the students have done everything right, like what happened this semester, the majority of them did everything right. I'm going to start raising hell with the state saying, hey, I have students that want to take the test in week 2. So you need to go out and buy the tests so they're available then. This semester, they bought them in week 4, and they weren't available to you folks until week 5. And so you're not late in getting your test done. They're late in getting them out to you to be able to take them. So in our class, it's probably 2/3 of you still need to take the CLA. I can tell you that everybody that's taken the CLA passed it, so that's a good thing. But
Mine yesterday.
okay, but my goal is that everybody takes the CLT and passes it, because that's the big dynamo certification. CLA is nothing to frown at. I mean, it's at least $2 more an hour no matter where you go with it. But the CLT, that's 10 or 15 bucks more an hour. That's getting a management or leadership opportunity. And so that's where I'm trying to get everybody at, to just make them more marketable, more successful in our field. Especially my students. I know a lot of you may be business students or another discipline, but my supply chain students, no matter if you're in Indianapolis or anywhere in the state, this is vital that you get these certifications to make you successful in the field. So whatever I can do to help you do better on the CLA and the CLT, I'm more than willing to do that. I'm going to have a review thing live, and I'll have one recorded for the CLT. But for the CLA, I'm pretty sure, just based on how you folks did on your assignments, that everybody's going to be fine on that. The CLT, we still got another week of it. And the feedback I get is that it's written with you making decisions, like critical thinking decisions, more so than definitions of this truck means you do this, or it'll say, just like we did in those scenarios, you got 500 cars coming from Germany. They need to be in New York. You got 30 days, or how do you get it there? And then they'll have the different. You can use ship and truck, or you can use rail. I have people pick rail like there's a train track from here to Germany or something. But it'll be scenario or critical thinking type of format for you to take the second one. But for the most part, everybody that attempts that, I got about 85% pass rate. And anybody that does fail it, when they take it the second time, they pass it. And so it's worth studying and being ready to take it. Your test that you purchased, both of these, you have up to a year to take them. And so if something comes up, life happens or whatever, you can still go back out and take that CLT. I'd like for you to get through the CLA before we finish our semester. Some of you have already seen, have made appointments to test in June and July. And oh, by the way, we're done for today. If anybody needs to leave, you don't have to wait on me. I'm just yammering.
Have a good day.
Yes, thank you.
We're allowed to show up at Lawrence campus and just take the test, right?
She said she would walk you in.
Okay, and who is the lady I need to speak to?
Her name is Robin Lacey. She's the manager of the place.
Okay, Robin Lacey.
I think I put her one of her emails in our announcements, but I'll stick that out there again. If you,
Okay.
It might be a good idea to just make sure you know their hours. But they have people there that are certified. You have to have the CLA certification to be able to give the CLA test. So some of these sites that are smaller than Indianapolis, they don't have anybody at their test center that can give the test. And so that's why they're not offering it. They want you to go to a neighboring campus that has somebody, or take it through ProctorU. Is anybody here took it through ProctorU? I thought we had a couple of you that did get through and took it at ProctorU. Nobody?
It's still not showing up. It's still like all math.
Yeah, me too.
Same with
Me too,
Austin. He
Meryl.
still can't sign up for
I
it.
can't either, so.
Just showing math. I can't even get 2021. I can only get like 2018.
I don't know how that happened. Was it 2021 before?
It was 2019 and 2021. It was 2019 on mine and 2021.
The last time I pleaded with the folks, they said that, well, did your students add MSSC to ProctorU? I don't know where you can do that. Where you can add MSSC.
And then I shared my screen with you, and then we both went there and you seen.
Yeah, I mean, I even went through, like, I'm going to take the test myself as a student, and I couldn't find anything that's where I selected MSSC to add them into ProctorU. So
what are we supposed to do?
there's something that's changed in how it worked. Last semester we didn't have any of these issues.
I checked it yesterday. It says CLT on my page already, and they sent me like 3 emails that something pending. I just got to take action and then select the session.
So one of the things we discovered is once you make a ProctorU account and they send the test to ProctorU, ProctorU is supposed to send you an email saying, do you want to schedule to take this test? Well, it's showing up in people's junk file. If you go to your Ivy Tech email, Ivy Tech puts it into a junk file. We've said, hey, make ProctorU a recognizable address so it goes to your mailbox, but it's in your junk mail. And so if you check your junk mail and you're looking for something from ProctorU, it'll say, do not reply ProctorU. And it's just giving you a link in there that you go out and actually set up for your test of your equipment and then schedule for your test. They give you an invitation to schedule your test, supposedly. So I was trying to find out if anybody got one of those invitations. You were saying that you did get correspondence from them, right?
No, I got three emails yesterday, like the day before yesterday, about the invitation and then the rules of the test and everything, like 3 emails. That's
okay.
It's pending, yeah.
And they came to your email account without any problem, or you had to go find them?
No, they came like directly to my inbox.
Okay. So some of you, if you could check to see if they are trying to cooperate with us and get this straight, and it just went to your junk email, just do a search with ProctorU and see what comes up as far as messages. And it should pull it from everywhere, from your junk email, from your outbox, all that.
And what if they don't get an email? What are they supposed to do?
Well, I'm to the point of frustration so bad now. The test manager has said that she's going to cooperate and let our students walk in. They don't even need an appointment, but that's Lawrence. And for some people, that might be a bit of a haul.
Yeah.
She has influence, or she's the manager for Avon and for downtown. So those 3 test centers, she has enough clout to get you walked in. But for the folks who are strictly ProctorU, or I mean, their
Virtual
schedule or their transportation or whatever dictates they use ProctorU. I know Kate actually called ProctorU and had conversations with them trying to get this worked out. I just I don't know who's dropped the ball on this. If it's I don't want to play the blame game. I want to play the results game. And I keep being told it's fixed. It's fixed every time I bring an issue up. And by name, they say this person's right, this one's right, this all the way down the list. But then they said give it 2 days, and that was last week. So everybody should have been straight this week.
Yeah, we've been trying for like 4 or 5 weeks to get him signed up, and it just, there's no class, your class doesn't show up, and there's no virtual option.
Well, would somebody be a guinea pig and share screen, and let's see if we can walk through once to see if we can identify a fix?
I don't know how to share a
I
screen.
can if you want.
Okay, I make you the co-host, and then you can share your screen with me, but let's see if we can have Kate do that. All right, so let's see.
Wow.
Yes, it has. Come on. All right.
Get it.
Grandma.
Okay, I just made you the.
Well, get it on.
Nobody.
It has, hold on. Oh, to me does. You think it'll be on?
I don't know where he went.
In connection.
Shoot.
Oh no.
Hmm.
Oh man.
Great.
Ooh, I don't know if I want to.
So none of you have been able to take the test either?
No.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Well, all right.
Where's he at?
I don't know. He's gonna have to join in again, I guess.
Where did he go?
He left us. He's frustrated.
So he just wants me to go to Proctor U, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
Okay.
log in.
You and try to like sign up for the test, you know, log in and
So
you click your, I think,
Yeah.
yeah, sign in. And go to schedule, yeah.
and then it's Ivy Tech and 2021. And that's all. I just have math classes.
Yeah, that's what we have too. Yeah, we don't see his class on there. At one point we did. And then it went away.
Well, normally, with the things, I mean, it shouldn't show up in the, when it's really available to you, it wouldn't show up in this screen. It would show up at the left with the big square, like big square, it says CLA. That's what that means when they're gonna send it. I mean, you can call. I'm not so Kate what she did. I mean, when you call the proctor you to give them like last name, first name, email address, and then IV Tech, Indianapolis, and then even the instructor name. They may be of help if they could, and they post it there, and they would send you. Usually, they would send you they would send you an email like welcoming you to your test, and then from that email you click that click that that means
Well,
you
I got an email from Proctor U that was saying confirm your account, blah blah blah.
Yep.
So I did that,
Yep.
and then I got another email saying, you know, whatever, congratulations or whatever, you've been successfully added or what enrolled, or I don't even know what it was. So I don't know what I did. I finally just gave up and just scheduled my in person for my exams because I don't know how to. I'm afraid I'm going to run out of time here.
Yeah, and I don't know what to do.
He's not even he's not even on here anymore.
I guess we should all leave.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go up to the site, to the location. And take it.
Did you say that someone said you have to call in order for them to sign you up, or in order to?
I thought he said that you could just pop up there.
Pop up where?
At the Lawrence
Yeah,
facility.
I mean, she's asking about Proctor U, is that correct?
Yes, I'm talking about Proctor U. Like,
oh, I don't know. No, I have no idea because I've never successfully been able to do it. I did think that there was one person from our class that actually did the Proctor U test. It wasn't the guy that left, you know, that left for his job or whatever. I thought it was the first guy that took it, or maybe I'm wrong, but I thought somebody did Proctor U, but maybe not.
Somebody did.
Oh, there he is.
There you go.
Okay.
Oh, well,
What
Okay.
did the CLT or CLA?
I don't
Okay.
know. I have no idea.